Alrighty, hello everyone and welcome. I'm Emma, one of the librarians here at Rockland Public Library, and we are so thrilled to be hosting tonight's talk. Our next talk that's coming up actually isn't for a couple weeks because of Thanksgiving. So that'll be our Camden Conference event with Bill Hall. That'll be the 1st of December at 6:30 here in the community room. And then the week after that, we're going to be hosting Andrew Vietz, who is a park ranger. And he's going to be talking about his work in Baxter State Park for the past couple decades and so sharing some of his stories. So that's going to be pretty fun. And that'll be December 8th at 6 o'clock, I believe. And before we do get started, I want to let everyone know that you're welcome to answer or ask Kirk questions or give comments at the end of the talk. And for Zoom people, if you could type questions into the chat and I'll read them aloud for Kirk. And I think that that's everything from me. So I'm going to turn it right over to Kirk, who is the Fox Island Regional Steward for the Maine Coast Heritage Trust and has 28 years of environmental education experience from all over the country. His main hobby is to be entertained by the natural world, and he has found that the big fisher in his neighborhood is a source of boundless bundle of entertainment. He currently lives on the St. George Peninsula with his family, Amy and Leif, and he writes a nature column for MCHT and edits the Vinalhaven Sightings Report. And then he goes outside. All right, and I'll turn it over to Kirk.
Thanks, and feel free to answer any questions. Hey, welcome aboard, everybody. Thanks. My name is Kirk, and I want to welcome everybody. This is our welcome photo. It's all new, not stale at all, to the Fresh as Fresh Fishers Are King presentation tonight. This is the third time I've done this, the first time in person with folks, so this is pretty nice. Let's see if that works. All right. This is my thank you. Please remember to be safe photo. I want to thank the Rockland Library and M. Lewis in particular for helping putting on the show and hosting it and everything. That's great. I also want to thank the Maine Coast Heritage Trust for considering this important enough to be called work. And I want to thank you all for coming out, braving the wilds of Maine. It's chilly out there, I guess. Like I said, these shows are originally made to be intended to be in person. This is the third of three. I'll talk about the trilogy in just a second. Interactive presentation with lots of eye contact. So smiles and talking with hands and weird facial expressions and, in-person stuff. So it's good to be here in person. It's the first time I've done this in person. I was here last year doing an otter talk and that was fun. But at the same time, I want to thank those folks at home for turning on their computer. I hope it wasn't too much of a struggle. And it's nice to have the Zoom option. It's COVID bonus. My Be Safe picture. We're going to be talking a lot about getting out in the wintertime. And I just want to remind everybody, you're going on the snow, you're going on the ice. It can be dangerous at times. This is where I fell. Snowshoeing. I tripped. This was the night before, snowshoeing in the dark. This is in St. George. The tip of my snowshoe caught a little drift and I ate it so bad. I didn't spill any of my coffee. I always have coffee. I didn't spill any of it. But if you do fall out there, do not feel bad. One of my favorite things to do out on the ice is to take pictures of where animals have fallen. This is where a young bobcat was happy and jumped right on the ice. I was like, ah! I didn't see it, but that's what it looks like happened to me. Anyway, so this all started as a single presentation called Owls Are Easy, Otters Are Easier. And it's developed into this trilogy over the last 18 years. To say that all the talks have the same objective, to get people out there looking. Last year we did the otter talk. And actually somebody sent me photos afterwards of otter scat and an otter den that they had found from coming to the talk. And he's right here, that guy over there. I'm not going to embarrass him, but Miles sent it to me. I love to hear about folks getting out and seeing stuff afterwards. If you find stuff, feel free to send me photos and whatnot. But we started with Owls Are Easy. This is a long-eared owl out on Lanes Island on Vinalhaven. Lots of fun. We talked about tracking, talked about finding pellets, finding nests and such. Then we moved on to Otters Are Easier, and this is from Clark Island, right down the way in St. George. They're great. They're a creature of habit. We talked about short and sweet tracking. This is great. Coming out from the ice. This is actually on Vinalhaven, Old Harbor Pond. Come out of the ice, go to the latrine, come right back in. Short and sweet. That was it. It's great. You're over. You can go on with the rest of your day. Your tracking is done. And then, of course, today's, which was going to be Fishers Are the Easiest. but that's not true. And the reason that's not true, I think, is because they go into trees. They're not, people call them elusive. That's a mental block for people, I think. They're out there, they're doing their thing, but when you're tracking them, as soon as they go in a tree, you're like, where did they go? Who knows where they're gonna come down? Otters can go under ice, I know, but there's only so many holes that they're gonna come out of. Tracking fishers, once they get in the trees, can be kind of a challenge. But anyway, like the two other presentations, this one is eternally a work in progress. Anyway, so today we're gonna explore, can you see the fisher there? Pretty cute. We'll explore why fishers are king via a fine blend of fisher and weasel natural history, tips and tracking basics, tool use, and bits of advice through stories, slides, videos I've taken mostly over the last 8 winters since we moved to the mainland 2015, and what I like to call getting to know my neighbors. This is the PSA shot. Just so you know, this is a nature-based program, plant-based or whatever. If you do get into tracking, which I have to say is tons of fun and is way better than cross-country skiing, you will likely, what? Why is it? What is it? Oh, what is that? Amen. Whatever. Okay. Sorry, that was a good point though. You will likely see evidence of events that run the gamut from beautiful to not so lovely. And not to build this up too much, but I apologize up front if any images in the show disturb anyone, while also not apologizing for any images that disturb anyone. It's a classic New Jersey mixed message. Anything goes in the show like this, just like out in nature. I'm not sure what this fisher is doing right here. It was eating a dead deer, and it turned at the camera. I think it was chewing. They tend to be generally quiet in general, except for during the mating season, which is only 2 weeks in March in this area. And apparently they can be loud. Many people have told me about hearing them screeching and doing all kinds of sounds. They live in my neighborhood. I've never heard them. Anyway. Oh, this is this is me tracking snow angels in Acadia. A little bit about my background. For the past 15 years, I've worked for Maine Coast Heritage Trust as the regional steward for Vinalhaven and Northaven. I manage preserves, monitor easements. I'm on local, community committees and such. I also do a lot of outreach, school programs on Vinalhaven, and pre-COVID, Castine, Frenchboro, Lubec, St. George, walks and talks. We're going to be doing a series of winter walks, hopefully on Clark Island, weekly, maybe every other week down this winter. I also do write a column, and it's on my card over there. It's called Nature Bummin with Kirk Gentalen. Got like 52 of them posted on the MCHT website. And then I do edit the Vinalhaven Sightings Report for Vinalhaven. Anyway, MCHT did not accept this as my official photo for my bio on the website. Before that, I did environmental ed. That's my kid on a beach. Well, he's 13 now. That's when he was a lot littler. And it was great. And I have to say, sharing the outdoors with kids of all ages is the most rewarding thing I can think of. Everything in this show has been learned from field guides or personal experience. And this is the best how I learn. And we're just going to talk about what I've learned and what I've seen with the fishers up to this moment. Forewarning, you probably may have already realized this, but much of my adult life has been spent hanging out with 5th graders or being by myself in the woods. So my style of banter often has no filter. So just a heads up. Anyway, oh no, we don't want to do this just yet. We want to, hold on. Every now and then we have to do this. It only repeats if you do it this way. So a little bit about fishers. We'll talk about natural history, evolution, but first its name. What's in a name? Despite the name fisher, oh, I can see it down here. I don't have to look up there, do I? Watch the way it moves its head while it's moving. It's pretty cool. Despite the name fisher, they do not eat fish. The name is instead related to the word fitch, which means European polecat, or the pelt thereof, due to the resemblance of the animal, which they're somewhat closely related to, both in the Mustelid family. The name comes from the colonial Dutch equivalent, fizz, I believe it is. Oh, so there's one walking around. This is not too far from my house. And this one, this is a trail cam. Yeah, and I'll talk about trail cameras and where to put them and what to do. Isn't that fun? Anyway, pecan, which is Abenaki word form. Pecania is the or Pecania is the genus. Penananti is the species. Once again from Abenaki, sometimes known as Weejack, that's Algonquin. Other Native American names for the fisher are Thacho and Chinicho, both meaning big martin, and Wabanaki, it's Uskul. Kingdom, King Philip comes over for Guinness Stout. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Kingdom, animal, phylum, Chordata, class, mammal, order, carnivora, family, Mustelidae, which is the weasels, and then Picania and Penitenti. Let's see, Mustelids. A Mustelid-like creature first shows up in the fossil record about 40 million years ago from a common dog ancestor, which all of our favorite mammals come from dog ancestors, bears and sea lions and seals and whatnot. There's 56 species of Mustelids worldwide, 22 genuses, everywhere except Australia, Antarctica, and a couple and some oceanic islands. There's 11 species in the US and Canada. They're shared traits. I like this one. I like the way this one swings its, is this the one where it swings its feet? Yeah, it's here, and then those are some strong claws that this guy, she has. We'll talk about that. Tracking them, all Mustelids have 5 toes, and you can see them. Yeah, I'm sure you can count to 5. They also have so this is what, short-tailed weasel, ermine. This is mink, same 5 once again. They have well-developed anal scent glands. How about that? Glad I'm not a weasel. This is an otter at Lake Maguntacook, whatever, Camden, Rockport, that was spraying, marking a little bit there. And they're all killers. That's another common trait between them. Varied sizes, but similar shape. This is a river otter. This is her name. We called her Larry. This is out back of my house in St. George. Tend to be very long, mostly built for high-speed chases, going to tunnels, like on the ground or in under snow. This is a sea otter. They are the biggest Mustelid in North America. This is, of course, out in California. It's a female. How can you tell it's a female? Yep, the nose, exactly. It doesn't have any skin on the nose. It just mated, and that is, unfortunately, if you've ever seen weasels mate, you're glad you're not a female weasel. Anyway, but mink would be more typical body shape around here. This is in the White Islands on Vinalhaven. They're all over the place on Vinalhaven. Really long, and they will go into tunnels and stuff. What I'm talking about, rodent tunnels and whatnot. But here's our fisher. So description: large, long-bodied, and bushy-tailed, head, neck, and shoulders grizzled yellow-brown or grayish-yellow, body dark brown with long guard hairs, legs, feet, and tail blackish. Females are smaller than males. Body size runs between 17 inches to 31 inches head and body. And then the tail is another 12 to 16 inches. So a male might be about 4 feet long, and the tail is impressive. The tail is really impressive. But a female probably 2.5 to 3 feet long. 4.5 to 12 pounds, largest ever recorded was 20 pounds. Males can weigh twice as much. That's what it says here. Let's see. Oh, I didn't. Oops, sorry. Hey, it's porcupine. Lifespan of a fisher is up to 10 years in the wild. Adults are likely to live more like 4 to 5 years on average. Home range males will have 15 square miles and range between 6 and 32, depending on food availability, and females about 5 square miles. So they roam a bit. The Picania genus, which is their genus, is believed to have evolved in Asia. Evidence shows that ancestors of the fisher migrated to North America during the Pliocene era between 2.5 and 5 million years ago. 2 extinct mustelids were found in Eastern Asia, which kind of confirms mustelids of the Picania genus, kind of confirms that there was some migration going back and forth. Anyway, fishers today range from Quebec, Maritime provinces, New England. Keep looking over there, it's right here. West across Boreal Canada to southeastern Alaska, south to the western mountains of Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, California, and formerly south to Illinois, Indiana, Tennessee, and North Carolina. Fisher habitat favored coniferous forests, mixed conifer forests as well, commonly found in the boreal forests within its range, which is good. Fishers were extirpated from much of the Northeast United States, 1700s and 1800s, when loggers and farmers cleared forests and unregulated trapping took its toll. During the late 1800s, as farms were abandoned and land became reforested, fisher numbers rebounded. Recently, it's expanded in the eastern United States. In 1950, logging companies in New England, with permission from each state, reintroduced fishers into northern New England to control porcupines, because at the time they were eating all the seedlings that they were planted or that were planting in areas where they had logged. And this is one of the main reasons why I think fishers are king, and that is because they are killers, and not just of porcupine, they're generalist killers. Their primary food is snowshoe hare and porcupines, but they are also known to supplement their diet with small mammals, birds, insects, nuts, berries, and mushrooms, and carrion. And I actually find them more eating carrion than anything else in my neighborhood. But while this behavior is not common, fishers have also been known to kill larger animals, such as wild turkey, bobcat. They're actually one of the main predators of bobcat, and Canada lynx. And this is my favorite part of this. And I'm not just going to be reading this whole time. We'll get to my stories in a second, but this information, I want to make sure I get it right. Researchers in Maine have found about a dozen cases of confirmed fisher predation on Canada lynx, and several more suspected cases. According to the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife biologist Scott McClellan, the fishers involved in these kills attacked lynx bedded down in snowstorms with a quick, powerful grip bite to the lynx's neck. Signs of a struggle indicated that some lynxes attempted to defend themselves, but McClellan states that the fishers would finish the cats off pretty quickly. There's some struggle, certainly, but it didn't appear to last very long. That's the quote from McClellan. The McClellan study documented 14 fisher-caused mortalities of Canada lynx from 1999 to 2011 in northern Maine, and that was the leading source of mortality in their study. 18 deaths, 14 by fisher. Fishers, though, of course, around here are one of the few predators that seek out and kill porcupines, even though if you go to Clark Island, there's tons of porcupines there, and there's fisher that live out there as well. Stories in popular literature indicate that talk about them flipping them over and like scooping their belly like a melon or something, like a ripe melon. That's not the case. They actually will attack the face first and keep on attacking its face for about 25 minutes before it can kill it, apparently. All right, redirectional. My family and I moved to Maine in 2004 from California via summer working in Homer, Alaska for me. And when I moved out here, I'll be totally honest with you, I didn't really get tracking, animal tracking. I didn't get it because everything was tracking. Like, this is a northern parula. I heard it, I tracked it, and I took this picture of it. Tracking to use historical evidence, I didn't really get it, mostly because where I lived, you could just see the animals. Pescadero, California, just north of Santa Cruz, is great. I mean, there's coyotes you could see. I mean, might not be great for the people in their backyard, but you see coyotes, bobcats. I had 1 month, April 2004, 31 sightings of bobcats in 30 days. I had 5 one day for my bike before 8 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, I didn't really get why you would even need to track, because folks tracked out there. I was like, you're tracking the animal. It's right over there. Like, let's take a look at it. This was great. This particular bobcat, this was in a spot where we would watch a great horned owl nest, and we had to kind of shoo it off. This bobcat, I took this picture from my bicycle, did just with my binoculars, holding my little digital camera while still on my bike, not pedaling, obviously. This bobcat never saw me at all. But when I got to Maine, we've had snow, and now I understand tracking. Sorry. Oh, nice. That all changed when we saw snow. Snow makes everything great. You can follow as long as you want. Snow and snowshoes, complete freedom. That's what that means. And you can go out, and ice is my favorite place on earth. Tracking to me has been a Maine experience. Now, I'm an otter guy. I'm an otter and bobcat guy. Those are my mammals. And my first winter on Vinalhaven, this is on lanes, there's tons of otters out on Vinalhaven. So discovering tracking otter, I was hooked, and it's been a downhill ever since. And I mean that in the most positive downhill way. On Vinalhaven, there are a few choices for predators. There's mink and there's otter, and there's great horned owls. That's pretty much it on a regular basis. And when that's all you got, that's what you know. And I really learned otter tracking very well, which is important because when we moved to here, this is what's called the marsh. This is I make fun of it. It's a body of water that's creatively called the marsh. And that's right behind where I live. We moved close to the St. George School, it's right behind the St. George School. Amy, my wife's teacher, and Leif is a student there. And so I had otters on the brain. When I realized I was going to move near this thing, I was like, I can't wait to get out there. And this is another one of these PSAs. This is a tracking tip thing. Where we lived, we were close to the ice, but we couldn't get right to it. And this is in an effort not to be the creepy guy in the woods. And if you get into tracking, whether you're whatever gender you are, you're going to be probably the creepy guy in the woods that's walking around and people see you and they're like, oh, like I didn't realize other people existed. So anyway, so I would try not to walk by the school so people wouldn't see me going through the woods. I tried not to walk behind my neighbors' houses so they wouldn't be like, hey, there's that guy in the backyard. So what shouldn't have taken long would take me 20 minutes. But on the very, one of the first ones I walked, I came across what I thought was an otter trail in the woods. And it was an otter that wandered around, not like otters will go through the woods. There's a 1.5 mile long trail that goes from the basin to Vinyl Cove on Vinalhaven by Folly Pond. And they just through the woods and they just went, oh, and they go full speed from one spot to the other where there might be fish or whatever, or for mating or whatnot. But this otter appeared to be walking all over the place. And this is another reason why it dawned on me. It took me a little while, but I was like, maybe that's a fisher. I thought it was a small otter because their prints are about 2.5 by 2.5, which if you're familiar with weasel tracks, they are tiny, tiny little tracks. Otter tracks are big. This is more like an otter, and big feet makes it easier to walk in the snow, apparently, kind of like snowshoe hair. So this is actually an adaptation. And that is one of my favorite things is that their feet are so big, almost like an otter. Yeah, there it is. Tracks are the size of otters, huge feet. And that helps. But you know what? Maybe we'll talk about tracks right now. You can count them. There's 5 there, and this is a typical mink or typical fisher track. This is a typical fisher pattern, and this is what I go by more so even than count. I hardly ever count toes because once you learn the patterns, I mean, you never just look at one track. You're like, oh, that was great, and meanwhile the track keeps on, the trail's going off to the side. This is what they call a 3/4 lope, and it's very similar to this 3/4 lope of an otter. And when you see it, this is it going across the ice on the marsh, and I'm pointing to it like it's going across the ice. Kind of a straight line, but definitely the kind of a group of tracks. Very similar. Once again, here's an otter that was doing this 3/4 lope. This is kind of like low snow, just kind of trucking along. In deeper snow, fishers will bound. And that's where your back feet land exactly where your front feet were, pretty much where your front feet were. So it looks like 2 dots going around off in the distance. This is a mink or from a mink on Vinalhaven doing that same bounding thing. But really, when it comes down to it, the pattern, I mean, makes a difference. This is 2 coyotes and 2 river otters. The coyotes are on the left. And they're coming towards us, and the river otters are on the right, going the opposite way. The coyotes do what's known as direct register, and that is where your back foot goes exactly where your front foot was. So it makes a line, pretty much a line of tracks. It's the most efficient way to go through snow. It's the most efficient way to go through grass, and that's what they do. Otters don't care. They will do their bounding. They can't do the way that their legs are. They can't do the direct register. So they have that typical thing. So when we're bounding, and then you can see a little bit of a belly slide up here. So when you see the pattern, you know right away it's a weasel rather than a cat or a wild dog. But the big difference between fishers and otters with the tracks are fishers don't belly slide. Fishers don't like to go on water either, but they don't belly slide. So if you see any belly slides, oh, that's my kid, Leif, hanging out. All right, so then Leif with the otter track. Oh, and this reminds me of a story. When I moved to St. George in 2015, Don Reamer, he's a friend of mine, gave me a housewarming gift. He gave me a dead great blue heron that he found on the side of the road. And it was fantastic because we just moved to from Vinalhaven. That meant that I had to clean out the whole freezer of all the dead animals that we'd collected over the years. But great blue herons are big, and Amy definitely was not into having that in the freezer. So we lived near the school, and this is our backyard there. We lived right next to the school, and we made a little trail for Leif to get to school. So I thought what would be fun is to put that dead great blue heron on a tree on the side of the trail. Like, what would be more fun than that? So we put it up there, and sure, the first day I got some good responses from my family when they came home. But then like a week later, we started noticing that the legs were missing from this great blue heron. So I decided I'd put up my trail camera. And when I talk about trail cameras, I'm talking about motion triggered cameras. And often this one has different settings. It gets triggered and it'll take a picture, wait a second, take another picture, wait a second, take another picture, or it can do that and then take a video. But what I do now is I just put it on video, because video would let you see how they're moving and stuff. You don't get like a blurry, like weird thing. So I put this up now. This is the middle of the day. Oh, this is 10 in the morning. But so it's not the middle of the day, but we're right next to the school, a couple hundred feet from a couple hundred kids. And this red fox started showing up middle of the day, ripping this great blue heron and getting some good air. So this reminds me of another story. Not too long after this, Amy had a chicken, one of these, like, yeah, chickens that you eat, but it was like one of these hippie chickens. So there was like, I don't know, it was hippie chicken. It was like corn fat, I don't know, it was a free range, whatever. And so she opened up the chicken, it was in this plastic, because that's where hippie chickens come, in plastic, and you open it up and it smelled awful. I've never experienced, it was like the whole house. We're like, whoa. And Amy's like, what should we do with it? And I was like, and she's like, maybe I can cook this out of it. I'm like, there's something wrong with this. And Leif, bless his soul, 7-year-old, was like, I am not eating that. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go put it on a tree and put the camera up, see if I can get that fox. And you might be like, wow, you're gonna give that fox like some really gross chicken? They look at that gray blue heron that it's eating. Like, there's some gross stuff out there that these animals eat. Not saying that I should just give anything, but so I put it up, and little did I know that a fisher was going to come by. And there it is. That's the chicken. I mean, it was this tiny little chicken. Like, it's amazing how quickly it went bad. And it brought it, and this is, once again, really close to my house. Hold on, sorry. So this is a weasel closely related to wolverines, and that is essentially the same size of an otter, and they can climb. And they're just so cool. And that's they go up into the canopy, and look at that guy breaking it. But they're great climbers, and this is another reason why I think that they're so cool. It's a great adaptation. I'm going to come over here and point to it. The back feet, because they can climb and they run up a tree and they run down a tree. Fishers can adjust, can turn their back hind legs almost 180 degrees. So when they're running down, they're holding on with their claws, but they're not holding on. This guy is holding onto that branch with his claws, but not like this. He's got his feet backwards, holding on, and they can do that full speed running around. I mean, it's a fantastic adaptation. I thought this was going to be the best picture I ever got of one doing that, and it is pretty good. Anyway, so they're very graceful, very elegant. Look at this is Witherley Woods in Castine. I was supposed to do a kids program there, it got canceled. I got to tell you, that's like a dream when you end up going to a place and the school's like, oh, we can't make it there. I'm like, there's always, I'm from Jersey. There's some part of me that's always like, I hope it gets canceled, because then I get to go roam by myself. And here I am tracking this fisher. I mean, this is a big critter, and it's bouncing along this branch, not knocking the snow off. And they like to jump. This is where this fisher was on the root at the very bottom of the screen, and it tried to make it to the root. These are two, blow down trees, and it almost made it. But fishers are cool because when they do jump, they leave these full body imprints in the snow. And I was like, thank goodness those kids didn't show up. Do they attack humans? Well, I've heard of folks being cornered by them. I mean, I'm sure that all fishers have different personalities in different situations where, like, they would probably run away if they could, or they'll climb up a tree. I mean, that's what they get dogged. The dogs find them, they get treed, whatever. The dog chases them up a tree. I mean, I've heard of people, one guy was telling me he was hunting and this fisher was coming up at him and he had to shoot him because it was, but I don't know. Maybe you were right in front of its dad, because they nest up in trees and stuff. I've never actually, has anybody heard of one actually attacking somebody like out of nowhere? So probably not. Anyway, so, oh, here, this is good. So then at Thanksgiving, we went to upstate New York, to Nelson, New York, where my in-laws live. And they said that people, oh no, we went in their yard back in this gulch behind their house, and there was fisher tracks all over the place. And they're like, yeah, people have been saying they've been seeing the fisher. So I put up, you know, go on vacation, got to bring a trail camera. So I put it on this log that went across this creek. And sure enough, that's where it would cross. It would not get near the creek. This creek was like this wide. And it was like, I'm not going in there. But the coolest thing about this situation was how easy it was to find its den. And we're going to talk about dens now. So we came down, saw the tracks. We're like, oh, look, it goes up this hill. Oh, look, there's a hole in the ground. Oh, it's really dirty around this hole. That's where it lives. That was so easy to find. There are 3 types of dens. There's the natal or birthing den, where they give birth in, of course. Maternal dens, which is where they raise their youngsters. And then everything else is considered a temporary den. And that's what this is. If they find, like they have their territory and they will use the dens over and over. But this one was cruising through and it was like, oh, there's a dead deer nearby. Oh, I'm going to stay in this spot for a little while. Oh, no, there's nothing here. I'm going to go over to my other part of my territory, find some food and stay in there. This was great. This was right by the hole. It was like, we know why this guy's hanging around. Anyway, back to Maine. So now we'll talk about more about dens, but back to Maine. So my first walk on the ice from we moved, I should say this, we moved about 1/8 of a mile away, but it was like a whole different world. Access to the marsh wasn't this 15-20 minute, not trying to be the creepy guy in the woods thing anymore. It's right at the back door. It was a minute down to the water. So my very first walk from where we live now on the ice was to find holes. There was no snow on the ice. There was snow in the woods, but there was some snow, but there wasn't that much. I wanted to find holes in the ice because once again, if you know where the holes in the ice are, tracking otters, it makes it a lot easier. You just go over to that hole and see if they came out. Like I knew where this hole was, and you can see it came out and it looks like it ate a fish because there's the fish mouth and a bunch of blood there. So I'm walking around the marsh and I get to a spot where there's some blowdowns and I'm like, it's easier to go into the woods than to stay on the ice. So I go into the woods and I come across, and you can see there was some pretty deep snow in spots, this bounding trail. And this is there was clearly a fisher, big enough, bounding off. And even though I was in the otter zone, I decided I would follow it. And I'm so glad I did, because I followed it and followed it. It felt like forever. Followed it long enough that I came upon a couple spots where it had peed to mark, which is, you know, typical for animals. I don't know if you can pick it up in this though. Every time I've seen their urine, it's got like this greenish tint to it, almost like antifreeze. I don't know. It didn't taste like anyway. Anyway, so I was there enough times. It was long enough to see where it peed a couple times. There was also spots where it had obviously rolled. I mean, this is white snow. I don't know if it picks it up. This is white snow and it's brown. Like the fishers, they're not really, you know, hygienic like I am. It was pretty gross, but eventually it came to this, and this is an antler sticking out of the snow. And I was like, this is awesome. And sure enough, there was a deer that it had been feasting on, and you can see the trail that goes right up to it through the snow, and it's eating the deer. So I ran back to my house. We're going to go away. It was right before Christmas. We're going to go to South Carolina to see my mom. And so I put the camera up and I had it up there for 10 days. And when I came back, there was, hold on, I got to get this number right. Looking for openings, deer antler, 3,200 photos on the camera, which I know to like relax though with it, because on Vinalhaven, I've come to my camera and had 800 photos and had 790 of it like being ice moving up and down with the tide or whatever. So I was like, all right, I gotta see, but I had 2,300 shots of the fisher on this deer, 10 days. And it didn't even go there every day, but it was just there and the camera was right on it. And it was feasting a bunch of coyotes and a bunch of, you're going to get, if you put up a camera, you're going to get the deer that's like, oh, what's this? It doesn't even notice the dead deer behind it. But I got so many fun pictures of this fisher doing something that this is right before it opens his mouth. It was chewing. And then this one spot over here, you can see it's rolling on its back, because that's its foot. That's its little foot pad. Oh, that's so cute. And look how happy. Its tail is wide up in the air, on its back, rolling around, lots of sniffing. But it was fun. I mean, and the only other pictures I had of a fisher were the one ripping the chicken off the side of the tree. So I was pretty happy about this. And here's what the deer looked like afterwards. The coyotes had gotten to it. Some local dogs had gotten to it too. And this is what Leif looked like having a cookie picnic. We used to take cookie picnics. What better place than a dead deer? Anyway, I tracked it back to this den, which was really interesting. It was a den in the ground once again, half-mile away though. And it was making this trip half-mile, which kind of goes against that whole, like, they'll find a closer den or whatever. I don't know, maybe there were too many bobcats in the area. I don't know why it was staying so far away. But it was fun knowing which way it would go, because there were days, and I followed it for much of that winter and tracked it a lot. There were days where it was just, you could see they'd just eaten so much, and they're close related to wolverines. They'll eat and they'll stay in their den for a couple of days. If they eat a lot, if they know storm's coming or whatever, they can figure their knee hurts or whatever. But this guy was struggling, and it got to this otter belly slide. And this is a classic otter belly slide. If you're familiar with the St. George Peninsula, there's an otter trail that goes from the Ponderosa up over to the marsh and into Seavey Cove. It's about a mile, actually goes all the way from the St. George River. But this was a belly slide that came from the highest point near the Ponderosa all the way down to the marsh, 2,000 feet at least. This otter was just on its belly, like, sweet, loving it. And this fisher got to this otter slide, and even though it was, I knew where its home was, it's supposed to go that way, it was like, nah, this is easier. So it walked up the compacted otter trail far enough that it actually was helpful, and then it took off. And you'll see that the coyotes will use otter slides too, or belly slides, when it's deep snow. I just thought it was classic. I was like, oh man, I'm kind of like honorary fisher. Anyway, when you get into fishers tracking, once again, you'll get to know all of the fallen logs in your area, because they love. So that's using the fisher or the otter slide. This is helpful. They have a hard time in snow. They'll hop up on any fallen log, any log that's leaning. It helps with hunting sometimes, but it also helps with their movement. But yeah, this is right in my backyard. This is just craziness. All these fisher taking advantage of the logs. You also get to know the base of trees. A lot of times, now I look at trees in the summertime, and you can see there's like leaves everywhere, or in the fall, but mostly in summertime too. And there'll just be this whole area around a tree where there's nothing, it's bare. And you're like, what has been running around that tree? It's probably a fisher. Maybe hunting squirrels, maybe not. You also get to learn where they find these logs that they push off on and will launch themselves, which is pretty cool. Different than otters and mink, I don't find their scat that much. That whole long trail going back and forth, I never found scat. They don't use scat to mark very much. But when you do find it, it might have fur and bones. This is gross. This is, you can see the porcupine quills. Apparently, that's what porcupine poop looks like. And they'll also eat apples. This is apples from the neighbor's yard. Anyway, so back to, oops, sorry. Last, I shouldn't show that. Back to this. So we figured it out. This was, I have to admit, I did put something on the side of that tree. I was hoping to get a picture of a fisher with its feet turned backwards. I was hoping to get one coming down. So I did put bacon grease on this tree a couple times. I've been told that by somebody that is the same as bear baiting. I'm not totally sure if I agree with that, but I only did a couple times. But the best part about this picture is its tail is touching the ground. So then I had Leif come out and measure how big it was. And it came out to about 3 feet, 2 foot for the body, 1 foot for the tail. So this was a female. We figured out it was a female that's been in the yard. And I tracked it to this cavity. And this was great. Oh, this I gotta, yeah, so this is in a quaking aspen. And I went to the tree. Sometimes there was scat below the tree. Sometimes there wasn't. It was hard to tell when there wasn't snow, if she was going to this tree. And I took my family and a couple friends to it, and everyone looked up at it and said, man, you're crazy. There is no way a fisher is going to fit in that tiny little hole up there. And I just loved it. I'm like, well, I followed it to this tree. I just love the logic. And it became a dream of mine at that moment to see a fisher sticking its head out of that cavity. Anyway, so this, 2021 we're up to. So it was somewhat active. You knew it was somewhat active because of the scat. Now, at February 2021, in the wintertime, that's my house way up there, this big male started showing up in the area. And you could tell it was a big male, or at least it was a male, huge stride between, the footprints were huge stretches between it. This was a much bigger animal, and I was jazzed. We got a female out there, got a male in the neighborhood. It's February, which means we're getting close to March. March is when mink and otter both are mating, have their mating season. Maybe it's the same with fishers. I can't wait to find out. And then there was no snow. So I didn't know anything. I couldn't tell anything. I didn't know what happened. But this is probably good. Well, let's see what this picture. Oh, but I did track this big male all the way back to this big tree. And that's the other thing that fishers will take you to. The biggest trees in your neighborhood that you didn't even realize are around. This big pine tree is where this male fisher lives. Anyway, I'm just going to mention really quickly the fisher life cycle, because I was very excited for this to happen. This is 2 winters ago. The females go into estrus heat for only 8 to 10 days a year. They're available for mating 8 to 10 days of the year. And they go into estrus right after 5 days, maybe 10 days after they give birth, which is interesting. So they give birth in what's known as a birthing or natal den. Then they leave the babies there. They leave them for a little while, and they'll mate, and they keep coming back to the den. But that's the way it is for about 4 or 5, 8 days. And then they'll take those babies from that birthing den, and then they'll move it to a maternal den where they'll start to raise it. And they'll have 4 or 5 maternal dens in an area that they'll bounce between. Anyway, back to, so they mate. So this is in March, and they give birth in March, which is interesting because the eggs are fertilized, but they remain suspended. It's delayed implantation. So the egg is fertilized, but it does not attach to the uterus for 10 to 10 and a half months. And then it's a quick development, 30 days, and they give birth. So 1 month of gestation, and then 10 and a half months of delayed implantation. The female fishers are pregnant for all but a couple weeks of the year, but they're actually not developing. It's really interesting. So anyway, I was kind of excited to see anything like that, but didn't happen because there was no tracks or there was no snow. But then we come to this year. And I had a great winter tracking the fishers in my neighborhood. Anywhere, people ask me, are there fishers everywhere? Every preserve I go to, like there's fisher sign, fisher stuff. But this year, my neighbor, my favorite neighbor, I don't know if any neighbors are on the computer, my favorite neighbor, called me on March 14th saying, there are 2 fishers in my yard. One is up in a tree if you want to come and see. And I was super excited. I was over there in minutes, and I got pictures of this fisher, and the guy, Elliot, the neighbor, Ellen called me, Elliot, her son, came over and said that, oh yeah, Watson, their dog, had scared up these 2 fishers in the yard. I was like, no way. And there was one of them. I started taking pictures, and she was beautiful. She started coming down the tree. This was really interesting because at first I'm like, oh, it's totally scared. And I'm like, wow, you know, there's no way I'm going to outrun this thing. Like, and it's coming down the tree. And I'm like, do I need like an escape route or something like that? But it didn't care. It just came down the tree and ran off. But then, and I was pretty psyched. I got these pictures. This was great, even though it was kind of like, it was pretty impactful. I mean, it had been treed by a dog. So it was like, I got pictures of it. It was kind of like, it wasn't wild or anything like that. And then I ran into Elliot like a week later, and he said, yeah, Watson kept on treeing. It was 4 days in a row that it treed that fisher. I was like, what? Like, first in my head, I was like, why are you letting your dog do that? But the funny thing, it was the dog's yard. The dog had been there for years and years and years, had never come across a fisher. And all of a sudden this fisher, and why would a fisher repeatedly come back to the same spot as it's getting treed by a dog? And the answer is mating. Because I should mention this stuff, that is mating. This is that same day I took these pictures. There was a little bit of snow. It was March 14th, little bit of snow only on like the icy parts of the woods. And I was able to track where these 2 fishers had come up to that spot where it had been treed. And I'll tell you this is like, they're doing they're in line. They line up together and they're doing this little march. I've never seen tracks like that with a fisher. And they spent a lot of time marking areas, following each other. I'm going to guess there was a lot of sniffing going on. This is where they went from walking normally to this little shuffle step that they were doing. But the coolest thing was every so often I would find a little drop of blood, by the tracks. And that is estrus. That is the female letting a male know that they're ready to mate. And I was psyched because now I have pictures of 3 different Mustelid estrus. This is a mink. This mink was in estrus. This is her hopping on Lane's Island, mid-hop. I mean, they don't eat while they're running. This is not blood from the mouth. And this is actually me and Leif by an otter spot on the marsh that was full of estrus. It was like a 6x6 area in snow, just blood. It's just like, all right. So of course, I'm pretty psyched that I got that estrus photo. But when Elliot told me that they had treed the fisher several times in the spot, I was like, well, maybe there was a maternal den nearby, because she was obviously hanging out in that area, attracting males. So I went back to that area, and sure enough, I found this cavity freshly chewed. I haven't seen anything like that around. And below it, of course, lots of fisher scat, so very active. And I was hoping, because this is not too far from that other, cavity, I was thinking maybe this was the maternal, the birthing one. Oh no, not the birthing one, the natal. And then she'll take it to the maternal cavity. And maybe that's the one that I know of. So I put the cameras up, and this is where a huge moment in my life happened. Amy Palmer, my wife, got a grant. It wasn't for school. It wasn't a grant for money. It was a grant for supplies. And they sent her 8 trail cameras. And the thing was, we were going to put them up around the school, and I was going to help. But all trail cameras are different, so you got to practice with them. So all of a sudden I had 8 trail cameras, because I was pretty stingy with the one. I wanted to I don't want to miss the bobcat. I don't want to miss anything. So I put it up. First off, I started looking around the neighborhood for all the different cavities that it could maybe 5 or 6 cavities. There's plenty in the neighborhood, always coming back to this. I put the camera up, and I put the cameras up, and I figured out when it was. I should give you the kid stats. The kits, they're called kits. The youngsters, 2 to 3 average, 1 to 5 total. They're born blind, helpless, partially covered with fine hair. They begin to crawl after 3 weeks. So they're just, after 7 weeks, they open their eyes, and they start to climb after 8 weeks. They're completely dependent on their mother's milk for the first 8 to 10 weeks, after which they begin to switch to solid food. So in my mind, that's about late May or so. Late May. After 4 months, kids become intolerant of their litter mates, and at 5 months, the mother pushes them out on their own. So I had these cameras up around my cavity tree, this one, and I went there. I was going to catch the 8:45 to Vinalhaven on May 31st. I got Leif off to school. I went down. I ran out to where the camera was. I was just going to switch the memory cards, and I got down to the camera, and as I'm switching the cards, I hear this noise, this purring. It was kind of like purring, and I look up, and looking out of that whole cavity is the fisher. That was the dream I had. And this is what I'm gonna say, but I didn't have my camera. But I always have my camera, but I didn't have my camera because I'm one of those guys, my camera had broken. And I'm binoculars, camera, like, you know what, there was a time when I didn't need to carry this stuff around. I'm not gonna replace it until I really need it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I need it. But it didn't matter, I got it up here. So I was just like, what? Like, do I go to work? What do I do? This fisher's looking at me. Do I stay around? Like, I want to hang out. But I grabbed the memory card. I went and got into the line at the ferry, and I looked at it, and here, so this is that morning. This is 7 hours before I got over there. And that is the mom fisher dragging a baby fisher out of its den down to the bottom of the tree to teach it to climb. The first time I had the camera, there's nothing before this for 5 days, nothing before this. So I was pretty psyched, and I went to go, where are we? Wow, we've made some progress in this show. I will show that again. If I do it this way, it repeats. That's why I keep forgetting. There's no sound. The cameras that Amy got have no sound, but I was just like, blown away. So this is 1:04 in the morning. And you know what? It's going to get better. So I'm just going to show this one more time.
Are they more nocturnal?
They are more nocturnal, but they can whenever they want. It's one of those things. It's like, oh, they're so elusive. It's like, no, they're just on their Fisher schedule. So this is 104. And this is 114. This is back zoom. So this guy's just learning how to, but watch what she does coming down. Because she's got another one. And they don't want to come down the tree. And they've got those claws. So she is pulling on that baby's neck. Isn't that sweet? Oh. She did, but probably not this tree. Probably that one that was closer to where I'd gotten that picture of her. And then when they were done mating, she took her she has 3 babies and she took them to this tree.
Does birthing always happen in trees or do they sometimes go around?
From my understanding, it's always in trees. It's safer up there. But I'm sure if there's, for whatever reason, no tree, well, they wouldn't be there if there's no trees. So.
If there was an owl or a woodpecker in that hole, they'd chase them out.
Oh, I think that they would kill it. I think they would kill it. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, yeah. I'll give you 2 seconds to leave. No, you're better as a meal kind of thing. So this is, so that's 14, 148. They're going to go finally make their way. You can see they're getting tired. She's just hanging out like, come on, guys, let's go. And somebody said that was a great placement of the camera. And it was, but it would have been better if I didn't know. If I'd had it at the base of the tree to see what these little babies are doing on the ground. But it was pretty, that's just me being nitpicky there. So this is, once again, 1 o'clock, almost 2 o'clock in the morning. That one's getting a little better climbing or feeling a little spunky. 3, which I didn't know until the next set of photos because they weren't all in there. And once again, here she is. This is a minute later waiting for them. I don't know if she dragged them back down, but anyway, so, and then this is at 7:29 in the morning, that same morning. Remember, I'm there at 7:50. You can't hear it, but it looks like it's making, oh, cute. And then at 7:40, there's this one, I think oh, there she is, yeah. So I was there 10 minutes after that. That's why at first I was like, oh my gosh, I hope I'm not disturbing the Fisher. It was just awake. It was just hanging out with its youngsters. And apparently they're starting to get on each other's nerves at this point. But I also had another, so this is me looking, you can just imagine me on the ferry on Vinyl, going to Vinyl, and looking at this being like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get back. Because I have another camera. I have this camera, my camera, on a spot. I thought I had the den opening or the cavity opening in the view. I had to climb up a ladder, and I'm not very good with ladders. But this is what we got for that, dragging up just out of view, But let's see. But I think it was, I don't know if we can hear. This is what we're supposed to hear. Ah, there's no sound. Because that baby this is the pathetic. Where are you going? Anyway, we'll see if we get that. So I moved the camera and I left it up there. Amy helped me. She held onto the ladder, which and I got it up higher. I left it there. I decided I was not going to go back to look at to get the cameras until not to look at that camera until I could tell that they were gone. And they were gone 4 days later, June 4th. But so then I was very excited to get the camera back. You can see she is at the cavity. So haha, she does fit in that little hole. And now this is the third, and it's different now. She's not dragging him down the tree. She's pulling him back up the tree because these guys are ready to roll. Oh, but do you see that part where it could go pretty south, watch this, the lower one right here. Its hind legs. Ooh, it misses. Anyway, And so let's see what this one is. Oh, here she is stuffing that one back into the cavity. Like, no, playtime's over. Get in there. And those claws, it must just be so hard to maneuver these youngsters. Okay, it's just a couple more. She's just got her hands full.
What do you think the purpose of that big tail is if they're not swimmers?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. Could be balance. Yeah, balance, I would think.
Balance
Yeah,
in the tree?
in the trees. But right there, look, her feet are almost back. They're kind of 130. They're not 90. I was trying to do it last night. But her hind feet right here,
Yeah.
they're going up the tree. So I didn't need to put the bacon grease on the side of the tree. But anyway, so this is the third. And then the next morning, this was the last videos that I said, but this, you can't hear it, but she's leaving. Two of the babies are trying to get out of the hole at the same time and they got stuck. So she's got to go up and help them, but they're like, that's my best Fisher impersonation. So 5 in the morning, the next morning.
So they probably won't come back to that. No.
Well,
They're too big.
well, yeah, and this was the last little bit. That's the last one leaving that I got video of. And then about a week later, I got a video of her at the spot where Leif measured. And she just passed through and it was like, okay, she probably didn't take him too far. And then I didn't see another thing of her until October. So just a couple weeks ago. The babies are not with her anymore. Oh, I should show you some highlights. Hold on. Some other highlights. I like this one because she is pulling on that youngster and there's another one up in the cavity. That's like, oh man, I'm next. I don't know. Then that is like, I think it's the same death grip that like they kill lynx with, that it's holding on to these babies and trying to pull them off. But oh, I like the foot. The foot is pretty good there. This is it bringing up a squirrel. This is it bringing up a snake. And once it started bringing up, like, you got the feeling that was kind of gross up there. Like when they left, you could see flies buzzing around the opening. So it was time to go. But this was interesting because they weren't the only ones checking it out. This is on the second. That's a gray fox that swung by looking kind of curious. You got all those babies running around the bottom of the tree. Probably left some smell there. Probably left some smell.
Male play any role in raising the family?
Nope.
He
They
just-
are.
He just gets her pregnant and then takes off.
That's-
Lives by himself.
Yep.
He has to do all the hunting for the baby.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's the way. It's like there's so many wild. I mean, I used to lead elephant seal tours at Año Nuevo, and like you get out there and you're like, I'm so glad I'm not an elephant seal, like female or male for that matter. There's what works, what has evolved, gajillions of years. Can be kind of disturbing, but yeah, no, they're on their own, and it doesn't take too long. But you know what the interesting thing though is, so thinking once again about those babies. Remember last year when I wanted to find when February 2021, the big male came through the yard. Wanted to see if anything had happened, couldn't. That's how I know that something happened, because those are the babies from the year before. 2021. Anyway,
They'll have to go start their own territory.
yes, they are on their own now.
They'll leave the territory where they were born.
They will leave the territory. They will wander. They often actually, for maybe a year, they might not even find their own territory. They might have to kind of like be on the marginal side. My friend Ryan in Rockport said that a fisher got a bunch of his chickens the other day. And he said his neighbors got nailed too. I'm wondering if that wasn't a young male, or not a young male, just a young fisher that is looking for a territory, because they've never had trouble before where they're having trouble now. Anyway, so a little bit about field guides. I've got some field guides up here. And actually the bendable library thing, I think I got my portrait taken today. So weird. Anyway, a lot of good books. Stokes Field Guide is good for behavior stuff. Paul Resendez, Tracking in the Art of Seeing, great books. This guy, Mark Elbrock with the Mammal Tracks and Sign, he's got that, but he also has, this is my favorite. It's not a field guide. It's not a field guide, it's a reference guide, Peterson's reference guide, but Behavior of North American Mammals. More information here than any other guides that I've been finding. Okay, if you use trail cameras, definitely practice. This is me and Leif triggering a trail camera on Vinalhaven when he was really tiny. Definitely practice with it. If you find a trail camera, don't take it. Somebody took one of my trail cameras this winter. Whatever. Somebody found this one and gave the peace sign. You know, that's pretty cool. Try not to take it. You never know what's going to turn up. This was when I was trying to get that great blue heron being ripped up, and this mat. If I ever figure out who that was, they are in big trouble. And just so you know, I mean, if you put them out there, animals will smell them, and they will possibly hear them. That one makes a noise when the batteries are running low, which is too bad. So you might get like, this is a raccoon checking out my camera really, really close. And this is on Vinalhaven. There's the latrine. This was an idea. Once again, just remember you probably don't want to hang out where you're going to put the camera. You don't want to like leave scents or whatever. I was getting a lot of pictures of otters going to the bathroom at this spot. And I was told by a trail camera guy that I have more pictures of otters going to the bathroom than anybody else. But I decided this one time, I'm like, I'm going to get like this otter level view. I'm going to put the camera really low. This is around a tree, really, really low. So it just like looks right out at him. And this otter came over and was very curious and rubbed right along my camera, which made it blurry. You can see there's a squirrel, but it's blurry now because otter's fur is gross. Just remember, if you put it out there, the animals, I try to, you know, leave my other stuff away and try and set it up, but you try to be as respectful as you can. But definitely get out there. It is winter. There's a lot of group stuff that's going to be happening where I'm going to be leading a tracking thing up at Erickson Field in February. I think hooking up with Coastal Mountains, still trying to figure out a date during that February vacation week to do one. Mary Spring wants to do one. But so if you, a lot of times when we lead stuff in the wintertime, you get folks who just don't feel comfortable going out in the winter. Cause I mean, these trails get icy, they get kind of crazy. But definitely don't forget to wander off by yourself. This was, that was the visiting nurse on Vinalhaven who wasn't supposed to be on that hike. Then she got an emergency call. Anyway, whatever. We are some of the luckiest people in the world simply because of where we live. The world's a better place when people take a look at it once in a while and then increase their rate of looking to more than once in a while. I said that, that's my quote. Anyway, cold is psychological. Get on out there. Here's the information for my nature column and also the Vinalhaven sightings, but it's also on my card on the back if anybody wants to look. I think that's it. That's me. Oh, that was a good beard. That was a good beard. I don't know what I was thinking. It's my mom's birthday. Anyway, so I can open up for questions. Is that right? Oh, thanks. Oh. Sure.
You didn't say much about your background. I'm just curious what your education focus was and where you went to school and grew up.
Oh, all right. Well, I grew up in New Jersey. So I went to school in California. I went to UC Santa Cruz, fighting banana slugs. Environmental studies was with a focus environmental education. So, and then Wisconsin, Tennessee, Georgia, Alaska, Vermont, just doing environmental education circuit, like the residential 5th, 6th grade camps. You get 3 or 9 month jobs. Cape Cod. I love Cape Cod. I've only been there, not in the summer. And let me tell you, it's incredible. But yeah, I met my wife through environmental education, and that's pretty much my background. And now I'm a steward, so I'm out, you're making bridges, you're doing whatever trail work, you can't help but notice whatever is going on. So definitely outside as much as possible. Cool, sure. That was an easy one. That was a question about me.
I have a question about setting up the cameras.
Oh, sure.
I have a camera and I keep moving it around, trying to figure out the best kind of angle to put it at or height.
Well, there's different kinds of cameras, of course. This one my mom gave me. I want to thank my mom for that. I think she's out there. I like this because what you can do, this one has a screen on the inside. So you can set it up, you can, walk by it and then look at it, review it and see if the angle was right or whatever. It does take a little bit every spot to get the right angle and the right, level angle. For this one though, this one doesn't have a screen, but it will let you know how many pictures are taken. I have a small laptop that I'll take with me and take the memory card out and do it like that, just so I can tell if I need to adjust it before putting the card back in. Yeah, I mean, did you look at them on your computer and it just doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten some things, but I'm just, where I am now, I just have a small area to put it in. I'm trying to figure out, do I want to aim it the long way down where they tend to be coming, or, because it seems like it doesn't take a lot of shots. He catches them after they've gone by.
Yeah. And once again, they're all different. This one, it says to be like 15 feet away. The book does. I put it 8 feet away, and it seems like it works great. That was the one with them licking the eating the bacon grease and stuffing the babies back in. This one zooms in a lot. This one has to be further back, but that was just learned from experience. I mean, they use the whatever red light that animals can't see. But sometimes you wonder if they can hear them, because like, especially when they're coming down a trail, sometimes they'll be like hesitate or whatever. It sounds like you're in a small, you don't have any other, I mean, yeah. But each spot is there. I would just say, keep trying. Like, sometimes I put them lower than I ever would have expected to put them to get more stuff, especially if you're looking for a fisher, because they're not elusive. They're out there, but they're just little, and you just don't see them necessarily, and unless you have a dog. Like Elliot I would never have gotten that phone call, except for they had a dog. Like they would have walked right by it, and the fishers wouldn't have cared at all. But these are fun. This is the easiest. I mean, I shouldn't say the easiest. It's like it's perfect. It's like you put it up, you come back in 10 days, and you look at it. It's like brilliant. Like,
I put one out in my driveway because there were bears coming where I was, and so I was trying to catch them, and I only caught like 100 pictures of me coming in and out. But then one night there was a cougar on. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I had no idea, just a cougar walking across my driveway. I wasn't here.
I was going to say, well, thank you for. I wasn't going to start challenging like in Rockland, like what? Yeah, well, yeah, California for the
Close to town. It was a surprise.
yeah, but they're elusive. They could be in town. I mean, I'm sure they walk through Santa Cruz and people never see them. Yeah, they're great. You can capture a lot of great stuff. Every spot, just keep trying. All right.
Do fishers swim?
They do not. Well, if you threw one in the water, I'm sure
I would swim.
But they don't, they naturally don't.
No, they avoid water.
Seems like you always find fish are near water, around ponds, typically where I live.
Well, they're in the woods, whether it's near the.
There's ponds.
Yeah, I'll say this. I've been impressed with how. I mean, they have no problem. This one has no problem going across ice. But it's first one. But the other one, remember that half-mile thing I was saying? It almost went all the way around the marsh to get to that. It could have easily gone across and been. And I don't think they don't like to get their feet wet, which is like, because a lot of time when I lived on Vinalhaven, there was a lot of rumors about fishers on Vinalhaven. I never saw anything, but people would say, like, I saw it in the water. It was like, there's a lot of mink, and there's some big mink out there. But yeah, fishers, kind of to generalize, don't go in water.
And they don't drag their tails in the snow. They keep them up because you don't have.
No, I've never. No, it's actually more the foot drag.
You don't see a tail track.
No, and actually, same thing with otters. The pictures I have of otters running on those trails, it's just that 1 second picture. The tail is up, or the tail straight back. They are not dragging. They are all business. cruising. But yeah, and I've never, other than where that fisher jumped and left its imprint, I've not seen a tail in any print. I was pretty psyched on that.
Do you have any sense of how large those cavities are? Or
Oh, I had no, that if you took the family of 4 in that cavity, I mean, it's got to be big.
and do you know if does the mom try to enlarge it at all?
No, unlined, nothing. Unlined. Well, from what I read, unlined, nothing.
Yeah, because I didn't see your pictures below. You didn't see
Any shrapnel or anything like that. Yeah, no, they're not. I'm not. Now I'm looking at trees differently. But I'll say this: on the St. George Peninsula, it's the aspen. That's where you want to be looking. And there's these cavities, and it's where the old branches were. And now I look at new branches or dying branches. I'm like, okay, you're going to be a cool cavity in 10 years or whatever. But yeah, I like when my friends were saying that they wouldn't fit in that hole, I was like, no, how is it going to fit in that hole? Like that thing is so small and what space, but apparently it's big enough and they're all over the neighborhood. I don't know if maybe a woodpecker had been part of it before, but not where they don't really, they make their own holes. They don't really take over where a branch had been, but that cavity must have been big enough, I mean, sizable. More than you would expect. I mean, it just looks like a little hole in the side of the tree.
Yeah, how she got the size that you had.
Yeah, and she's bringing a squirrel. She's bringing a dead squirrel on top of that, putting it in there. Look. Yeah. Claustrophobic.
Do they do any of their hunting from the tree and watching for prey to come and then jumping down on them?
Probably from not that high. That was about what, 20.
Stopping other trees.
Well, yeah, well, any of those logs that, yeah, they will hunt. They will go up to hunt around from.
No, that's not what. Do they ever sit up in a tree on a branch and watch for something to come by and then leap onto them?
Yes. But I mean, leap onto them. I'm not or jump and kill it. Yeah, they will go aerial. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure how often that happens, but they do go up in the once again, those leaners, and they're hunting from them. I mean, when it goes up to the top of one of those leaners and looks around and comes back, it's not just doing that like for fun. It's looking for food. It's looking for something. Yeah. But that'll be my goal next time, to get like the jump and the blood and the whatever. That'll be.
Do fishers like domestic cats?
Oh, yeah.
Like them.
Oh, yeah.
Depends on what you mean by like.
Their favorite food.
It's not their favorite food, but
I'm a veterinarian and I've taken care of cats that have been not killed, but they should have been.
because they were bad cats, they should have been killed.
The wounds on them are so bad that you have to euthanize.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
Multiple bites, little tiny bites all over the back end. Usually.
Oh, yeah. I would not want to be anything attacked by a fisher. I mean, they certainly are known for taking cats. We can talk about the study that they took whatever 300 some odd stomach samples from fishers in Vermont, I believe it was, in New Hampshire, and out of whatever 351 had cat in it, which to me doesn't sound like that much. But the problem with cats is if it's little Susie's cat down the road, one is too much for the fisher. I'll say this: the fishers those fishers in my neighborhood, there are outdoor cats all over the place. Not all over the place. There's several in the neighborhood. I've never heard of any of them having any trouble with the fisher because there's enough food. Then again, you got the fisher in Rockport killing 12 chickens in 2 nights for whatever reason, like.
How did that person know it was a fisher, not a fox?
Oh, because he saw it. He saw it. He saw it. And that's why his neighbor said, why didn't he shoot it? And then it's a whole nother thing. But for me, cats, I'm a big cat fan. I love cats. They purr, they sit on your lap, and then they tell you when they're done. If you have an outdoor cat, I mean, it's one of those things. Like, I'm not for them, I'm not against them, but if you have an outdoor cat, you should understand that your outdoor cat is part of the ecosystem. It is killing lots of stuff. And if you're fine with that, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But if your cat then is part of the ecosystem and becomes prey, that's also being part of the ecosystem. So, I mean, if they're going to go for them, they should kill them and eat them. No catch and release cats, by fishers or whatever. Yeah.
Cats do fishers have any natural enemies? Are they prey?
I think coyote. Well, Not really. No, I mean, it's humans that have had the most impact on fishers. I'm not going to say that, like, you know, a lynx and a fisher coming face to face, the fisher's not going to kill that lynx. It's sleeping or it's bedding or whatever, and they sneak attack. I'm not saying that fishers aren't snuck attacked by maybe an owl comes through and nails it, but then you hear stories like up in Alaska of owls picking up weasels, not fishers, picking up mink flying, and then the mink attacking the owl, and they both die, you know, like, because I would not want to mess with any member of the weasel family. No way, no way. Yeah, it would be, you'd probably have to be pretty hungry as a coyote to be like, all right, I'm going for that fisher. Like, there must be no voles or whatever, but not to my knowledge, not anything on a regular basis.
I interrupted a bald eagle eating a weasel once, but thought it might have been hit by a car.
Yeah, bald eagles are good with the road kill kind of thing. Probably in a pit, but I mean, bald eagle and a fish are actually crossing paths, probably not going to happen since they live in the woods and they tend to be nocturnal. They can be on their own schedule, but yeah, I mean, sure, mountain lion could take them, but I don't know if they ever cross paths.
How did they come up with 300 fisher stomachs? Are they
Stomachs.
hunted or are they
Oh.
trapped?
I don't know, man.
Trapping them.
I think they got a lot from trappers, actually, is what probably most of the cat. I'm gonna guess that they didn't actually go out and kill fishers to get their stomach samples. But then again, you know, there's that guy, the Winter World guy, who was going out killing kinglets to find out what they were eating. Anybody?
But are they, I mean, people don't use their fur or.
Oh, you know, no, they use the fur. Yeah, I mean, that part of what they were trapped for was their fur. And, you know, if you go to some of the, we went to one, Leif wanted to get like a sword. So we went to one of these, I don't know, it was like an arm, I don't know, it was this weird thing, but they had fisher pelts. The guy had trapped some fisher and was selling them, or was trying to sell them.
Do they have a bad musky odor?
Not the dead one didn't at all. But I don't know, he might have put it through the ringer or whatever. Yeah, you probably want to clean them before you, just from seeing where they go in the snow, and they're pretty dirty animals.
Is it legal to shoot them when you see them?
I do not know.
No season on them, but
I don't know.
because they are predators.
Yeah, I mean, historically there was a lot more hunting. I'm sure that there is a season. I would imagine that isn't. I don't know. The thing when the person who told me that my putting the bacon grease was bad told me that they were going to be caught in a trap because of what I did. Yeah, that's what she said. And that because they'd be attracted, but I don't know if you saw what they were eating in this slideshow. I mean, they're attracted to anything. Anyway, so I mean,
Is there any estimate about the population?
I haven't heard any yet. I don't know, but there's lots. There's lots, I'll tell you that much. I mean, somebody sent me a map. They tracked them walking right through Rockland, right by the water, that little creek that goes through. They make their way through Rockland. The stream or whatever, yeah, just up the way.
You mentioned the otter slide, 2,000 foot long
Yeah.
otter slide on the Ponderosa area.
It was between Ponderosa and the marsh.
Where is the Ponderosa?
Oh, the Ponderosa, well, you know, they call the marsh area the marsh. There's a pond on Walston Road in St. George called the Ponderosa. I didn't make up either of those names.
All right, I think we are actually just out of time for questions now, because we're gonna have to wrap up because the library closes at 8.
All
So
right.
thank you so much to everyone for your wonderful questions, and for Kirk for answering so wonderfully. And sorry that we didn't get to everyone's question tonight, because this is really thrilling. Well, thank
And
you.
feel free to take my card. There's emails if you have pictures. Nothing makes me happier than somebody saying, "Oh, I thought of you when I saw this pile of poop." Well, maybe other things make me happier.